Hey, I'm Shelly, a data scientist by day and a digital creator by night. Aside from my regular content on travel, data, or life, I enjoy breaking down any process. And this was very prominent when me and my husband were planning our destination wedding. Therefore, this series breaks down what I think are the top 3 processes you need to lock down to have a successful event. Welcome to episode 2, Organizing Group Travels with Flight Centre. Hi everybody, it's Shelly and welcome back to my channel. The main gist of this video is essentially being really well equipped for your travels, but also for your guest travels. In my case, I'm Filipino, and so inviting the whole family is a requirement, I guess. And I have a lot of family in Calgary, and I wanted to make that process really easy for them. The main benefits of doing your travels with Flight Centre or just with any travel agent in general is that you're able to have benefits from both sides of things. So benefits for you is that this enables you to lock in how many guests you're going to be expecting to come to your destination wedding, essentially giving your guests some deadlines to be well aware of, but also have that transparency of how much this trip is going to cost them. The other benefit to you is that there is a perk because of the nature of this collaboration. Essentially, you kind of locking in a whole bunch of guests in a resort package is that it's beneficial for not only Flight Centre to have you as a customer, but also the airline that you have that package with then already knows how many to anticipate during that period. Essentially, what you get is actually a travel perk where you will get a lump sum of money depending on what deal that they have at the time. In our case, we actually got like the equivalent of one person's package 6 times, and then we got that money back. So you can use this in multiple different ways where you can actually just save it for yourself, and then you can essentially use it as, I guess, your honeymoon money. One other suggestion that she gave to us too was if we wanted to help out any of our guests in paying off their trip, we can also give money to them. And then what we used it for was actually we treated out our parents to the trip. Then we also used, I think, 2 of the remaining vouchers to help any guests that were a little bit short or they just needed help in paying off the trip, especially if they were part of the entourage. We gave them that option. So we actually didn't even take anything back for our honeymoon, but that was like a huge perk, especially because destination weddings are equally as expensive for you, but also expensive for your guests. So it was really nice to be able to have that option for us. And then the last benefit that I got from this experience is actually additional to what you'll be able to get with your vacation package. But I was also able to arrange group excursions with Flight Centre because they have those connections. It was nice to just reduce how many vendors that you're coordinating with, especially for a wedding, because there's so many different vendors that you can end up going with. And that really made it easy for me to set up what the week was going to look like, and my guests also knew exactly where I was during the trip. The other benefits is really for your guests. You also don't want to have this nuanced communication between your guests if they were coming in on different days or if they were staying at different accommodations. This really locks them into one package, and they know that package price up front. They can also then pay it off in increments, depending on when you lock in and all that stuff, but you can really give them up to a year to save up for this one trip, enabling our guests to commit to a price and then pay it off with time. So the first order of business is reaching out to your flight agent, and this is going to have a few different components that I would suggest you have all ready to go in your email. Is when do you want the wedding? How many people are in your guest list? Which resort? What room types do you need in your quote? Lastly is your airline preference. When do you want the wedding? This is really up to you, but one thing that they normally do with their packages is that they will do like a week package. So what we did was we flew out on Sunday and then flew back on Sunday. And the only advice here is I would leave yourself 2 to 3 days before the wedding to have arrived, because you can do like your on-site meeting with wedding coordinator, ceremony rehearsal, and dinner before the wedding. I don't know, if you guys are traditional, then like we didn't see each other the day before the wedding, and so it gives you that flexibility. So depending on when you want to have your wedding date, just give yourself that 2 to 3 days in advance and then have it then in there. How many people you want in your guest list? So I actually invited a lot of people, and I guess was anticipating around 70 to 80 people to come to the wedding. In the end, we only got like I think 55 people at the wedding, but still having a viewpoint on this is crucial, especially when talking to the flight agent and making sure that they understand that you have a bigger party, is because typically these packages, they will accommodate up to 40 people. And in order for you to expand that reservation amount is that you would have to have as many guests opt in early and give their deposit early to enable you to get that point. So in my case, I had a feeling that I was going to be expecting more people, and so I was able to get all of the entourage and I think a few other bits and people to lock in early, and I got 36 early depositors, and so you are able to reserve double that. So then I was able to reserve 72 seats on the airline and a resort. The resort, so we already knew which resort that we wanted to have our wedding at, have stayed at this resort previously, and I already saw that they had a church. It was really an easy sell for me to just be like, I just want to know the packages from that resort. I would definitely do your research before you reach out to your flight agent about the different resorts that you want to get quotes from. If you did have a few in mind, I think the flight agent could help accommodate getting quotes from each, just so that you know the different prices and all that stuff. And then what room types do you need quotes for? I think in the few earlier quotes that I got, we only got quotes for double occupancy, so just 2 people in a room. But then I expanded that to double occupancy, triple occupancy, and then unfortunately the resort that we chose, they didn't have like a quad occupancy, like 4 people in a room. I don't know if that's the same for any other resort, but that's also a good thing to keep in mind. And then I also had a few children for that as well. Airline preferences, I mean, if you're coming from Calgary or Canada in general, you would have WestJet, Air Canada, and then maybe Sunwing, depending on the different prices. Your flight agent will be the one to give you all of those different price points, but those were the airline in our package that they can then go into. To reach out to the flight agent a year and a half prior to the wedding. So I think we were going through different quotes and prices over the span of like 5 months, just to see if there was any fluctuation with the prices. And so we only locked in at the year prior mark. This was also due to the fact that airlines won't give out their flight schedules. The earliest is like 400 days in advance for a flight actually gets confirmed and all that stuff. And so I guess in that scale, you could end up reaching out to the flight agent kind of like 13 months or 12 months in advance to still give your guest enough time to understand the payments and all that stuff too. But it's also good for your flight agent to know you in advance before they go through this quoting process. So that was kind of the perk that we got in that whole thing. This brings us to the next step, which is now you've locked into a price. Now you can start to inform your guests about how much the trip costs and really setting up those RSVP deadlines, and hopefully your guests will opt into this package, because the more people that you have, again, goes back to that perk for you, but there's a few different things in this guest information that you need to know. So the timeline of things is that your first deadline for your guest is going to be the deposit due date. And this essentially locks in that price for the guests. This also signals to the travel agent of how many people are going to be in your group. I would take this deposit date as almost like a RSVP deadline as well, because essentially locks in how many people that you know are going to be attending. Then you have a period of after the deposit to the final payment date. This is the time where your guests are able to pay in increments up until the final payment deadline. There's a few payment options that they can do. So this was actually quite flexible, and I would say is my only comment about coordinating with Flight Center is that their process is actually very manual. And so there's not like a portal for your guests to just like start to put in their deposits and all that stuff, or like put in their payments. But essentially there's a process of you e-transferring, and they'll give you like a group code or whatever to transfer into. Or you can also do set up with the travel agent fixed payment amounts, and they will take it out from that authorized credit card up until the payment deadline. Be really, really flexible. This is the one that I wouldn't recommend as much, but it would be like you email anytime that you want to add payments to your final payment. So very manual in that you have to email them constantly to pay it off. But if your guests want that flexibility, then they have literally like those three options to play around with. In terms of cancellations, so going back to those periods, you have your from the initial send off to the deposit period. Your guests cancel between this period, they will get their deposit back, so no harm done. If they're after the deposit period deadline to the final payment deadline, they will just lose their deposit. If they made payments through that, I think that you can get those back as well. So, but essentially the main loss is your deposit. And then after that final payment deadline, all guests have paid already. You will just have your full payment all lost if it's not like a full like medical reason why you aren't able to attend. So that's kind of the situation in that process, and it's good for your guests to understand when and where to opt out depending on how much they want to lose. Additional items in this category of now, because you have this flight agent personnel, each guest opts into this thing called Group Vantage. And so they pay off the total trip amount, but they also pay like this, I think it's like a $15 Group Vantage payment amount. And this essentially gives you access to having this travel agent be kind of like a go-to person if they have any questions about trip payments, customizing your package, room upgrades, anything to do with their travel pretty much. Yeah, so that's pretty much the bulk of the information that you need to know. Now just getting into like random tips in this kind of collaboration is that I would definitely urge you to stick to those deadlines and really keeping your guests in the loop when they need to RSVP and when is like the really hard set date of you accepting more guests to come if they're especially not going in this group travel arrangement, because it just saved me a whole bunch of time to have all or most of my guests in this group travel. They coordinate all of that with the travel agent, and then there was only a small group of people that I had to keep in touch with about if they were going to make their own travel arrangements or just opt out at overall. The takeaways for this video, I will have the checklist items of what you need to do in terms of timeline of getting in contact with your flight agent, reserving that, what to submit to your travel agent, all the different communication reminders that I sent off to my guests, and you can pick and choose which one makes sense for you. So I'll leave that all in the description below, but essentially that is pretty much it. So if you guys have any additional questions, leave it in the comment section below and I'll be sure to answer them as soon as I can. But yeah, I will see you guys in my next video.